Welcome to the Beau Show. Europe moves to the right. That is the subject of today's show. And just as notably, its leaders are increasingly female. This is a worthy topic as we think about the global climate. No, not the climate alarmism that the United Nations and Joe Biden fearmonger you about, but just the political climate and the way the world is going. We are in a woke world. Wokeness has not just infected the United States, but it has spread like a cancer worldwide. Whether it's climate alarmism, gender redefinition, or immigration, the world has its collective issues. But perhaps more importantly, the world economy has come into focus, as Europe has relied a great deal on Russia's oil and gas. And with the war in Ukraine still raging on, European countries have had to rethink how their future looks. Even on issues like abortion, European leaders are taking a stronger stand. I want to focus on a few newly elected leaders and how they aim to reshape their respective countries' futures. Let's first turn to Hungary, where the people elected Katalin Novák. She was formerly Hungary's Minister of Families. Just 10 years ago, Hungary's population was in decline. There were even some years where there were more abortions than births, if you can believe that. The divorce rate was high as well. Novák implemented policies that encouraged families to have more babies. Working Hungarian women who have 4 children no longer pay income taxes. They get 3 years off of work to care for their babies. Couples can get a $30,000 loan to help buy an interest-free house, and repayment goes down with each child they have. The result? Well, marriages are up 83%. Divorce is at a 60-year low, and the abortion rate has dropped. Here she is discussing her philosophy.
Most important outcomes of our 10-year family-friendly or family-oriented policies, that the abortions dropped by 41%. And I think that we still have work to be done in this matter, because we have to point out the value of life.
These policies were added to the Hungarian constitution, and they even clarified something that U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson would not. The Constitution reads, quote, "The mother shall be a woman, the father shall be a man," unquote. They also passed a law that allows parents to have more say in their kids' education with respect to sexual instruction. This was, of course, a very DeSantis-like thing to do. Novák is decidedly pro-Christian and pro-family. But these new changes angered European Union, which called them anti-LGBTQ. The EU even threatened sanctions on Hungary for these actions, which, if you think about it, they should be far more worried about other things than that. Here's President Novák again.
I have never had the intention to have an international attention focusing on us or teaching lessons to anybody, but we don't want to be taught any lessons either.
So even though she isn't trying to call attention to Hungary or virtue signal, like so many leaders do, in a way, Hungary is becoming an example. But she's doing what she feels is best for her country and what the people elected her to do. And it is clear that with respect to declining population and increasing abortions, she has reversed that trend and made Hungary a more family-friendly country. Families are the building blocks of society. And it's interesting how she gets criticized by the EU for being pro-family. They seem to have no concern about declining populations and are more concerned about fringe identity issues. Now let's move over to Italy, where Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has been elected. But before I do so, I want you to notice how media outlets describe her, before you even learn a single thing about her. So take a look at this. From CBS News, who is Giorgia Meloni, the woman expected to become Italy's new right-wing prime minister? From NBC News, far-right nationalist Giorgia Meloni elected as Italy's first female prime minister. From CNBC, far-right Italian politician Giorgia Meloni elected Italy's first female PM. From Channel 4 News, Italy set to elect most right-wing government since World War II. And from MSNBC, fascism is on the rise in Europe, not just in the US. When you search for her name on YouTube, these are the headlines that come up. They're not commending her for being Italy's first female prime minister, which usually they would. They want you to think that she's a far-right fascist, a female Mussolini. CNN has said so, so it must be true, right? Vice News parroted that same headline. Meloni, Mussolini, They rhyme. Meloni built herself from the ground up in the Brothers of Italy party. Let's hear her philosophy.
Potrei farne tante altre di queste domande. A monte c'è quella che ci facciamo oggi: perché la famiglia è un nemico? Perché la famiglia fa così paura? C'è una risposta unica per tutte queste domande: perché ci definisce, perché è la nostra identità, perché tutto quello che ci definisce in questo tempo è un nemico, per chi vorrebbe che non avessimo più un'identità e che fossimo solamente schiavi, consumatori perfetti. E allora è sotto attacco l'identità nazionale, è sotto attacco l'identità religiosa, è sotto attacco l'identità di genere, è sotto attacco l'identità familiare. Non devo potermi definire italiana, cristiana, donna, madre, no. Io devo essere cittadino X, genere X, genitore 1, genitore 2, devo essere un numero. Perché quando sarò solamente un numero, quando non avrò più un'identità, quando non avrò più radici, beh, allora sarò lo schiavo perfetto in balia della grande speculazione finanziaria, il consumatore perfetto. E questa è la ragione per la quale oggi noi facciamo tanta paura. Questa è la ragione per la quale oggi questo appuntamento fa tanta paura. Perché noi non vogliamo essere dei numeri, noi siamo qui per dire che noi non siamo dei numeri, noi difenderemo il valore della persona umana, di ogni singola persona umana, perché ognuno di noi ha un codice genetico unico e irripetibile. E questo, piaccia o no, ha del sacro. Lo difenderemo Dio, la patria e la famiglia, che fanno tanto schifo a qualcuno. Lo faremo per difendere la nostra libertà, perché noi non saremo mai schiavi e semplici consumatori in balia della speculazione finanziaria. Ecco la nostra missione, ecco perché oggi sono venuta qui. Scriveva Chesterton ormai più di un secolo fa, vediamo se ve lo trovo: fuochi verranno attizzati per dimostrare che 2 più 2 fa 4. Spade verranno sguainate per dimostrare che le foglie sono verdi in estate. Quel tempo è arrivato, signori. Siamo pronti. Grazie.
This is a very fiery speech from Meloni, and it's delivered in a very Trumpian style. It's a punch back against leftism and globalism. It's about identity and sovereignty. Her point about being not just a number, just a consumer, just a comrade, is correct. Progressivism takes all of the individuality out of society, and she evokes Chesterton to make the point that fires will be made and swords will be drawn just to prove the things we already know to be true, like 2 and 2 make 4, and that leaves are green in summer. Meloni is defiant in her defense of family, God, and country, and those are the 3 bedrocks of any society. One of her fellow Brothers of Italy party members made the point that there is a difference between acknowledging the rights of other groups, for instance in civil unions or marriage, as distinguished from a lobby which wants to transform and upend society. And as I said earlier, Europe has been dealing with the immigration problem as well. Many Europeans are fed up, and rightly so. We deal with this same immigration issue here in America, where Joe Biden has allowed a record number, 2 million immigrants, to illegally cross into this country. And so governors have had to ship those immigrants to their doorstep. Europe has dealt with Arab migrants that have been scattered all throughout these various countries. Italians had become fed up with the Draghi government, which got them into some serious financial trouble. And the Brothers of Italy stayed out of joining the government on principle. So this populist nationalist movement is something Italians can believe in, much the same way that Americans saw Donald Trump as an outsider who wasn't drunk on DC power. And Trump delivered on the things they elected him to do. He rejected socialism and wokeism. He got the economy zooming. He tightened up border policies. So Italians likely see the same hope in Giorgia Meloni. But if we turn to the UK, Britons probably saw that same hope in Boris Johnson as he navigated Brexit. But Boris got drunk on his own power, holding parties during COVID. He proved to be an impotent leader of the Conservative Party and the UK as Prime Minister. He joined the climate paranoia bandwagon. So in the end, he stepped down because he had lost Brits' confidence. And now the Conservatives have elected a new Conservative leader, Liz Truss. The British pound had been declining and Truss is a financial mind. So rather than me explaining it, I'll let the bright guys, economist Stephen Moore and Larry Kudlow, explain it.
Well put, Larry. Look, Liz Truss is turning into a hero. I had some doubts about her when she was first nominated, but she has been a superstar. I mean, it's hard to find anything not to like about what she has done so far. You mentioned the tax cuts. You mentioned by the way, she wants to take that top tax rate, Larry, from 45 down to 40%. Very much like what you guys did in the Trump administration in lowering our taxes, and that caused the economic boom and more tax revenues. This is a very sound policy. Britain's going to go from one of the highest tax rates now down towards the middle. That's going to attract capital. She's cutting 1% off of income taxes for all workers. Fantastic. Let's reward work. It's very related to your previous discussion with Kevin McCarthy. We've got to reward work and reward people for getting back in the labor force. She's pro-fracking. Did you know that, Larry?
Yes.
She's in favor of fracking.
Yes.
They have an energy crisis going
Yes.
on. Britain has a lot of energy. They have a lot of oil and gas that they should be using, and she's in favor of that. She's in favor of a hiring freeze by government. Great idea. So this is you know what I call this, Larry? This is Bidenomics in reverse. It's fantastic. And look, the people in her camp are looking at what's happening in the United States, the disaster that's happened under Joe Biden. We're down 25% in real terms or something like that with respect to the stock market. So I don't have a good explanation for why the market has fallen there in Britain. But I'll tell you this: if she can get this all done, she is going to be the next Margaret Thatcher.
Well, I'm just saying the latest drop in the British pound. British pound's been falling a long time because Boris Johnson was running Joe Biden progressive, big spending policies.
That's exactly right.
And Boris, nice person, know him well and so forth down through the years, but, he was running an anti-fossil fuel policy.
So this is critical. Kudlow and Moore talk about how Boris was running a Biden-like economy, much to British demise. Truss, on the other hand, has a very different philosophy, and if successful, could really pull the UK up out of the doldrums. Let's hear from Liz Truss herself.
We want people to keep more of the money they earn so they can have more control of their own lives and contribute to the future. Secondly, it means securing affordable and reliable supplies of energy. We are cutting off the toxic power and pipelines from authoritarian regimes and strengthening our energy resilience. We will ensure that we can't be coerced or harmed by the reckless actions of rogue actors abroad. And we will transition to a future based on renewable and nuclear energy, while ensuring the gas used during that transition is from reliable sources, including our own North Sea production. We will be a net energy exporter by 2040. Thirdly, we're safeguarding the security of our economy. The supply chains, the critical minerals, the food, the technology that drive growth and protect the lives and health of people. We won't be strategically dependent on those who seek to weaponize the global economy.
Do you hear these tenets? Citizens keeping more of their own hard-earned money, energy independence and net energy exporter, reliable sources. See, these are the policies that make nations great.